They smiled when they told me the position had been filled. It was a difficult choice, they said, avoiding my eyes. I smiled too. The kind of smile you give when you already know the answer. The other candidate had half my experience, no postgraduate degree, and her presentation was full of buzzwords. But she had something I didn't, the body that fits. I could see it in their glances, the way their tone changed when she entered the room. Her laughter was light, effortless. Mine was measured, professional. They said she represented the company's energy. What they meant was, she looked good in the photo. I thanked them for the opportunity, gathered my folders, and left the building as if nothing had happened. But in the elevator, I caught my reflection, a confident, obese woman with a brilliant resume and a tired smile. For a moment, I thought of crying. Instead, I whispered to the mirror, "You'll see me again." At the time, I didn't know how true that would be. If you've ever felt underestimated for not fitting the picture, this channel is for you. Subscribe and turn on the bell. Here we tell stories that deserve to be heard. I grew up in a house where intelligence was the only thing we were rich in. My parents couldn't give me much, but they gave me the idea that education was a door, and that if I pushed hard enough, it would open. I believed them. I was the girl who stayed after class, who carried extra notebooks, who asked questions teachers didn't have time to answer. I learned early that competence could be armor. What I didn't know yet was that armor doesn't always protect you from what people refuse to see. In college, I was always the smart one, never the pretty one. People meant it as a compliment, but I could hear the invisible word they left hanging in the air. But. You're smart, but you're big. You're capable, but you don't look the part. I pretended not to notice. I thought if I kept winning, they'd eventually stop saying but. I graduated with honors, twice. Then I went further. Postgraduate, languages, leadership programs, late nights and early mornings, all of it, chasing the same invisible validation. I wanted to be undeniable, to be so competent that even their prejudice would get tired. My first job was in a mid-sized company. I worked twice as hard as everyone else, not because I loved competition, but because I was terrified of being seen as a charity case. I didn't go to happy hours. I avoided social lunches. I told myself that results were what mattered, not appearances. The truth is, I built my identity around being needed, not seen. Every time a boss praised my performance but never invited me to represent the company at events, I said it didn't matter. I called it humility. It wasn't. It was fear. I didn't want to hear again that my presence didn't match the brand. I remember once, a coworker told me, "You're too good for your own good. People feel threatened." I laughed. But that night, I cried in the bathroom, realizing she was right in a way she didn't even understand. My body threatened the order of things. I wasn't supposed to take up space and be brilliant. When I reached management, the comments became subtler, more polished, dressed in professionalism. During a performance review, one of my superiors said, "You have an extraordinary mind, but have you ever thought about presenting yourself differently?" I asked what he meant. "You know, a bit more polished, more aligned with our image." He meant thinner. He meant smaller. I smiled and said I'd consider it. That night, I stared at the treadmill in the corner of my apartment and felt sick. I had bought it months ago, thinking it would change my life. It mostly collected dust and guilt. I stepped on it, walked for 10 minutes, and stopped. Not because I was tired, but because I hated that the reason I was doing it had nothing to do with health and everything to do with being acceptable. The company where I worked then was eventually acquired. I was laid off during the restructuring. I didn't even get a meeting, just an email. "We appreciate your contribution to the company's growth." Contribution, a word that sounds generous and empty at the same time. I deleted it without reading the rest. The next morning, I woke up before dawn out of habit, sat on the edge of the bed, and realized I had nowhere to go. That was the first day I truly understood what it means to lose not just a job, but an identity built on proving your worth. I didn't tell anyone. I kept dressing up every morning for a week, pretending to have interviews, walking to the nearest cafe with my laptop, as if discipline could save me from despair. Eventually, I started applying again. Each interview felt like a repetition of the same scene. The polite smiles, the glances at my resume, the quick shift of their eyes toward my body. I knew that look by heart. It said, impressive, but always that silent but. I began to anticipate rejection before it came. I would imagine their emails as I left the building. We appreciate your time, but decided to move forward with another candidate. I could have written them myself. And yet, I kept trying. Not because I believed they'd choose me, but because not trying felt like surrendering. I couldn't bear that. One morning, after yet another interview where the recruiter avoided eye contact, I walked past a mirror in the lobby. I caught my reflection again, the same one I'd whispered to in that elevator months before. My pulse slowed. I looked at my own face and thought, "You're still here. You're still showing up." That was the first time I smiled at myself without irony. For years, I had worked for people who couldn't see past my body. Maybe it was time I started working for someone who could, someone like me. The lowest point didn't arrive with drama. It came quietly, the way exhaustion settles in after months of pretending everything is fine. It started on a Tuesday morning, a day with nothing remarkable about it. I woke up, opened my laptop to check for interview responses, and found nothing, not even a rejection email. Silence. I sat there, staring at the empty inbox, feeling like the world had moved on without me. I had spent my whole life believing that competence was a currency that never lost value. Suddenly, it felt like it was worth nothing. I didn't shower that day. I didn't brush my hair. I just sat on the couch, replaying the last interview in my head, the way the hiring manager's smile tightened when I walked in, the way he shuffled the papers as if the resume he was holding belonged to someone else, the way he kept saying words like cultural fit and brand-facing image. I knew what they meant. I had always known. But knowing didn't protect me from the sting. It only made it sharper. By lunchtime, I was too tired to pretend. I heated leftovers and ate them standing in the kitchen. The silence was so heavy it felt physical, like an extra weight on my back. I had carried weight all my life, but this was different. This was the weight of being unseen. That afternoon, I opened my closet and sat on the floor, surrounded by clothes I had worn to offices, meetings, presentations. Each piece felt like a relic of someone I used to be. I picked up a blazer I used to wear when leading big projects and pressed it against my face, breathing in a version of myself I no longer recognized. When did I become someone whose worth depended entirely on being chosen by people who didn't even know me? I didn't have an answer. That night, I found myself scrolling through the LinkedIn profile of the woman who had been chosen over me. She looked so radiant, so effortlessly accepted. Photos of her speaking at events, smiling in group pictures, wearing tailored clothes that fit the image companies want to sell. There was a caption under one of her posts: "If you work hard enough, the world notices." I laughed. A bitter, cracked laugh that didn't sound like me. I whispered to the screen, "Does it?" I felt pathetic, comparing myself to someone who didn't even know I existed. But I couldn't look away. I wasn't jealous of her beauty. I was jealous of her ease. The world opens differently for people who fit. I never had that shortcut, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel proud of having fought harder. I felt tired. Completely, devastatingly tired. At some point, the tears came. They were slow at first, then unstoppable, like a crack in a dam giving way. I wasn't crying because I didn't get the job. I was crying because I had spent years trying to earn a kind of visibility that was never going to come. I cried for the girl who thought intelligence could shield her from cruelty. I cried for the woman who worked herself to the bone, hoping someone would finally say, "You belong here." When the crying finally stopped, I was empty, but in a strangely quiet way. Not peaceful, but hollow. I went to the bathroom to wash my face and froze when I saw my reflection. My eyes were swollen, my hair a mess, my skin blotchy. But beneath all that, there was something else. A flicker. A tiny, unfamiliar spark. It wasn't hope, not yet. It was honesty. The kind of honesty that comes only when there is nothing left to lose. I pressed my palms against the sink and whispered, "This can't be it. This can't be the end." My voice cracked, but I meant it. The next morning, I forced myself out of bed. It felt like lifting concrete. I made coffee, bitter, too strong. I drank it anyway. I opened my laptop and clicked New Document. I didn't know what I planned to write, but my fingers moved on their own. I wrote, "If no one will open a door for me, I will build one." I stared at that sentence for a long time. It didn't sound like the woman sobbing on the floor the night before. It sounded like someone else, someone I wanted to meet. I didn't know it yet, but the lowest point wasn't my collapse. It was my turning point, disguised as defeat. The day I finally understood that the world wasn't going to shrink itself to make room for me, so I would have to expand instead. The decision didn't arrive with fireworks or sudden confidence. It came like a small, stubborn pulse of truth beneath my ribs. Steady, undeniable. I was sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the sentence I had typed the day before. "If no one will open a door for me, I will build one." The cursor blinked beside it, impatient, like it was waiting for me to catch up. I didn't feel brave. I didn't feel strong. I felt scraped raw, emptied after months of silent rejection. But maybe that emptiness was the point. Maybe it was space. Space for something new to start growing. I opened a blank notebook, one I had bought years ago and never used because I kept saving it for something important. This felt important enough. I wrote every skill I had, every project I had led, every result I had delivered. For the first time, I looked at my life not through the lens of who didn't choose me, but through the lens of what I had built. My resume wasn't a list, it was evidence. Evidence that my worth had never depended on their approval. When I finished writing, my hands were shaking. I realized I had spent years whispering apologies with my body, apologizing for existing too loudly, too visibly, too fully. But competence doesn't need apology, and neither did I. That afternoon, I walked into my building's small community workspace, the one I used to avoid because I didn't like being the only obese woman in the room. I sat at a table, opened my laptop, and forced myself to research things I had been too scared to consider before. Courses, certifications, international programs, leadership openings in companies abroad. It felt ridiculous at first, like trying on a life that didn't belong to me. But as I scrolled through job descriptions, I found myself thinking, I could do that better than half the people they'll interview. Not arrogantly, simply truthfully. The fear didn't disappear. It just became smaller than the alternative, continuing to live quietly out of sight. That night, I sent out applications not just locally, but internationally. I tailored each letter with precision. No shrinking, no softening, no false humility. I wrote about my achievements clearly, directly, unapologetically, like a woman who finally understood her own value. I didn't expect much. I thought maybe 1 or 2 companies would respond out of courtesy. But 3 days later, I received my first interview request, then another, then 4 more, all from companies abroad, companies that cared about results, not whether I fit a corporate photo shoot. I cried, but this time it wasn't grief. It was relief. The kind of relief that feels like the first clean breath after being underwater too long. One interview in particular stood out. A global group expanding across multiple regions. Their questions were sharp, serious, strategic. They didn't ask about culture fit. They asked about measurable results, crisis management, leadership psychology, cross-department systems. I answered with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. When the interview ended, the woman leading the panel, a senior director with a calm, firm voice, said, "We'll discuss internally and get back to you soon." I believed her. For the first time in a long time, I believed someone meant what they said. A week passed, then two. And just when I started to think maybe I had imagined the connection, I received an email. "We would like to proceed to the final stage." The final stage. I stared at those words until they blurred. Then the next sentence hit me like a bolt. "Our international board will be reviewing candidates for director track roles." Director track. Me. I sat perfectly still, afraid to move, afraid the moment would dissolve if I breathed too hard. The interview with the board was scheduled for the following Monday. I prepared like my life depended on it, not with desperation, but with purpose. Notebooks, research, case studies, leadership frameworks, strategy maps. I wasn't fighting to be seen anymore. I was preparing to lead. The night before the interview, I didn't sleep. I paced quietly around my apartment, rehearsing answers, grounding myself, reminding myself that I had survived worse. At dawn, I tied my hair back, put on my navy blazer, and stood in front of the mirror. For the first time, I looked at my reflection and saw not the woman they overlooked, but the woman they would regret overlooking. The interview flowed like water, not perfectly, but powerfully. I didn't shrink, I didn't soften, I didn't apologize. At the end, one of the board members said, "You have a presence." No one had ever said that to me before. Presence, not potential, not promise. Presence. As if I was already standing where I belonged. After the call, I sat on the floor and exhaled so deeply, it felt like years were leaving my body. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't luck. This wasn't charity. This wasn't a miracle. This was the result of refusing to disappear. The decision that changed everything wasn't sending applications abroad. It wasn't acing the interview. It was choosing myself, even when no one else did. It was the quiet, stubborn belief that I deserved to exist in places that had tried to push me out. And when the offer finally came weeks later, with a title higher than any company here had ever imagined giving me, I didn't cry. I smiled. Because I had known, deep down, that they would see me again. I just hadn't expected it to be like this. When the offer finally arrived, I read it 3 times before letting myself believe it was real. Director track, relocation support, leadership autonomy, a portfolio so large it made every job I'd lost seem miniature in comparison. I didn't scream or celebrate. I sat very still, letting the quiet truth settle into my bones. Someone, somewhere, had finally seen me without measuring my worth against my waistline. The irony wasn't lost on me. The validation I had chased for years came the moment I stopped begging for it. But what mattered even more was the realization that this was only the beginning. It was time to build something I had never experienced, a professional life where I didn't have to shrink to fit. The transition wasn't glamorous. People imagine success looks like airports, suits, and champagne. In reality, it looked like a small apartment in a foreign city where everything smelled unfamiliar. Stacks of documents on my kitchen table, and me staring out the window each morning wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. But every uncertainty carried a spark of freedom. I wasn't competing against anyone else now. I was competing against the version of myself that still doubted she belonged there. The global group that hired me wasn't perfect, but they valued substance over image. In the first month, I was given access to data, teams, and strategic plans I had only read about in case studies. I walked through hallways filled with people from different cultures, different sizes, different backgrounds. And for the first time in my career, I wasn't the odd one out. No one flinched when I entered a room. No one looked surprised when I spoke. People listened, and slowly my voice expanded into the space it had always deserved. Still, confidence doesn't grow in a straight line. There were days I woke up terrified I would fail. Days I sat at my desk feeling like an imposter wearing a badge that didn't belong to me. But each time doubt crept in, I remembered the women, the managers, the interns, the leaders, who would one day need someone like me in their corner. I wasn't climbing for myself anymore. I was clearing a path. The first project I led was brutal. A complete restructuring of operations across 2 regions, more than 100 employees, tight deadlines, high stakes. I worked long nights, studying every angle, refusing to be caught unprepared. I refused to let the old fear, the one that said I needed to be twice as good, drag me into burnout. Instead, I worked smartly, delegated, listened, carved out a space where collaboration mattered more than performance theater. When we presented the results to the board, efficiency up, costs down, turnover lower, the room went quiet. Then they applauded. Not out of politeness, but out of recognition. I stood there, not smiling, not shrinking, just steady, present. Afterwards, one of the senior executives approached me. "You have a way of commanding a room," he said. I almost laughed. All my life, I had been told I took up too much space. Now, suddenly, that space was power. Over the next year, I built what I had never seen, a leadership model where competence mattered more than aesthetics. I hired people who had been overlooked. I promoted women whose potential had been dismissed. I created mentorship cycles, development tracks, and feedback systems that valued results, not optics. I didn't announce any of this like some moral crusade. I simply did what should have always been done. And slowly, the culture shifted. People worked better. Team satisfaction rose. Turnover decreased. The board began inviting me to more strategic committees. I became the person they called when something was falling apart, not because I had the right look, but because I had the right mind. On weekends, I walked through the city, rediscovering parts of myself I had buried under years of pressure. I tried new foods without guilt, took long walks by the river, bought clothes I liked instead of clothes I thought would minimize me. My body didn't change much, but the way I inhabited it did. I started taking pictures again, not filtered, not posed, just moments where I existed without apology. One evening, during a leadership summit, something happened that marked the true turning point. A younger manager approached me after my presentation. She was nervous, twisting a pen between her fingers. I just wanted to say, "Seeing you up there makes me feel like there's a place for me too." Her eyes were soft, hopeful. I felt something warm and fragile open inside me. I realized then that I had spent most of my life trying to convince myself I belonged. And now, without intending to, I was helping others believe the same. That night, in my apartment, I sat by the window with a cup of tea and allowed the realization to settle. I wasn't just building a career. I was building a world I had never been given. A world where I didn't have to fight my body to earn respect. A world where competence didn't require camouflage. A world where someone like me could walk into a room, a boardroom, a conference stage, a negotiation table, and take her seat without shrinking. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet truth took root. I hadn't been overlooked because I lacked value. I had been overlooked because I was ahead of the places that weren't ready for me. Now I was exactly where I needed to be. And soon, without knowing it, they would need me too. Success isn't a single moment. It's an echo, It returns to you in waves, sometimes from mouths you never expected. I began to notice it a few months after settling into my new role. The first message came from a former coworker who had always been polite, distant, and vaguely intimidated by me. "I heard you're leading global operations now," she wrote. "I always knew you would go far." I almost deleted the message without responding. I didn't owe her anything. But something stopped me. Maybe generosity, maybe closure. I replied simply, "Thank you." I didn't add more. I didn't shrink myself. It was enough. Then came the messages from other women, strangers mostly. Some had seen my name in industry publications, others had watched my conference talk online. They wrote things like, "Seeing someone who looks like me in your position makes me believe it's possible," and "I thought excellence only belonged to thin women in fitted blazers." Every message was a mirror reflecting back the truth I had spent years avoiding. People had been starving for representation, and now somehow I was feeding what had been missing. The first time someone recognized me at a conference, a young analyst with wide eyes and a shaky voice, I was so startled I forgot to respond for a second. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to bother you. You inspire me." Inspire me. I felt a quiet, unfamiliar warmth unfold in my chest. Not pride, validation. Not the validation I once begged for from hiring managers, but the validation that comes from aligning with something much larger than your own ambition. As the months passed, I saw more faces like hers. Women who didn't dress to hide. Women who didn't whisper their ideas. Women who didn't apologize before speaking. Sometimes I wondered if I was imagining it. But then I'd walk into a meeting room and notice the shift. The way female managers straightened their shoulders when I entered. The way interns spoke a little louder when presenting to me. The way no one looked shocked when I took the lead in a complex negotiation. My existence had become permission. My voice had become anchor. One afternoon, I received an invitation to speak at an international Women in Leadership Summit. At first, I hesitated. I wasn't an activist or a public figure or someone who could deliver speeches filled with cliches about empowerment. I was just a woman who had survived enough corporate hypocrisy to recognize it instantly. But the organizer persisted. "We want your story," she said. "Not the polished version, the real one." I accepted. Not because I felt ready, but because hiding no longer felt like an option. The night before my talk, I rehearsed in front of the mirror. I didn't like the way I looked, not because of my body, but because of the vulnerability in my eyes. Telling your story is one thing, owning it is another. When I stepped onto the stage the next day, my pulse raced so hard I felt it in my fingertips. The lights were blinding. The audience was a sea of faces. And yet, when I began speaking, the fear melted, replaced by something steady and alive. I told them about the interview I lost to someone thinner, about the elevator mirror, about the lowest point, about the decision that changed everything. I didn't sugarcoat the anger or the humiliation. I didn't pretend competence triumphs easily. I told the truth, that sometimes excellence isn't enough for people who only value appearance, and that you should rise anyway, not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. When the applause came, it wasn't loud, it was long, sustained. Soft at first, then stronger, like an echo deepening. After the talk, women formed a line. One held her notebook against her chest as if afraid it would fall apart. Another cried before she even reached me. A third whispered, "I didn't know we were allowed to be powerful like this." I wanted to tell her that I didn't know either, not until recently. Back at my office, the impact of moments like these became unmistakable. Younger employees sought me out for mentorship, not because of my title, but because of my story. They weren't looking for strategies or shortcuts. They were looking for assurance, the kind I had once craved. Assurance that being overlooked didn't mean you lacked value. Assurance that a closed door was sometimes the beginning of a hallway you weren't meant to enter anyway. I began hosting small sessions with women across departments. Nothing formal, nothing advertised. We talked about leadership, but also about shame, ambition, identity, presence. One day, a woman near tears confessed, "I always feel like I'm taking up space I haven't earned." I looked at her for a long moment before responding. "Taking up space is not something you earn," I said. "It's something you claim." She nodded slowly, as if letting the words settle into a place she had never touched before. Word spread. The sessions grew. My office became a refuge, a space where women dared to exist without apology. And in those afternoons, surrounded by voices trembling with truth, I felt something I had never felt in any corporate room before: belonging. Not because they accepted me, but because I no longer needed acceptance to feel whole. The echo of other voices wasn't a reward, it was a responsibility, and for the first time, I was ready to carry it. There is a version of this story that people expect, the dramatic confrontation, the moment of poetic justice where the one who underestimated you finally realizes their mistake. I used to imagine it too. For months, I rehearsed it in my mind. Me walking into a room, my former recruiters gasping softly, their eyes widening in slow recognition as they realized the woman they dismissed was now the one in charge. In those fantasies, I stand tall, deliver a perfectly controlled smile, and say something clever, something unforgettable. But life, as always, writes a quieter ending. The moment arrived without warning, almost disguised as something ordinary. I was reviewing expansion plans in my new office when our global CEO forwarded an email to my inbox. Subject line, transition meeting, former executive team. One look at the list of attendees and my breath caught. Their names. The same directors who had chosen the thinner, less qualified candidate over me. The same men who had looked at my resume and then at my body and decided which one mattered more. I stared at the screen for a long time, waiting for anger to rise. It didn't. What I felt instead was a strange, heavy calm. The meeting was scheduled for the following week. I didn't tell anyone the connection between us. I didn't practice any dramatic lines. I didn't buy a new outfit or prepare some triumphant entrance. I went on with my life, my work, my days. The woman they rejected living a life they had never imagined for me. When the day finally came, I arrived early, not out of anxiety, but habit. Leadership had taught me that the first person in the room shapes its tone. I sat at the head of the table, reviewing notes, letting the quiet settle. One by one, the former executives entered. They greeted me politely, unaware. Their eyes slid past me with the same dismissive ease I remembered from years ago. Not cruel, just entitled. The kind of entitlement that assumes every powerful woman must look a certain way. Then the last one walked in, the main director from my final interview. The one who had said, "She's great, but her profile doesn't fit the company image." He looked at me. I looked at him. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, confusion, maybe embarrassment. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Good morning," he said, adjusting his tie. "You must be Director Collins's assistant." It took everything in me not to laugh, not cruelly, but because the universe sometimes writes comedy where we expect drama. "No," I said calmly. "I'm the director you're meeting with." Silence spilled across the table, thick and immediate. He blinked once, twice. His throat moved as he swallowed. The others shifted in their seats. No one spoke. No one apologized. No one asked questions. And that was the scene, the one I had expected to be grand, cathartic, explosive. Instead, it was quiet, awkward, almost mundane. so small compared to the weight it had once held in my mind. I led the meeting the way I led everything, with clarity, fairness, and expectation. They listened, they nodded, they took notes. They didn't interrupt me once, not because they suddenly respected me, but because the structure of the room, the titles, the hierarchy, the authority I had worked so hard to earn, demanded it. When the meeting ended, the same director approached me, his steps hesitant. He didn't look proud. He didn't look ashamed. He just looked human. "Congratulations on your position," he said, voice stiff but sincere. "It seems the company made an excellent choice." I smiled politely. They did. He waited, as if expecting me to offer something more. Forgiveness, validation, closure. I offered him nothing. He walked away with a quiet nod. I watched him leave, not triumphant, not vindictive, but free. That was the moment I realized something profound. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was seeking release. And I had found it. The justice I had imagined, the dramatic monologue, the symbolic reckoning, never came. Instead, life handed me something better. A reality where their approval no longer held value. A world where I didn't need them to see me for me to exist, to rise, to lead. A version of myself who no longer waited for an apology that would never be enough. That night, alone in my apartment, I didn't celebrate. I didn't toast to victory. I simply made dinner, sat by the window, and let the calm sink in. The girl who once whispered, "You'll see me again," into an elevator mirror had been right, but not in the way she imagined. They did see me again, and by then, I no longer needed them to. For most of my life, I thought of my body as the barrier between me and the world I wanted. I blamed it for every closed door, every second glance, every polite rejection disguised as not the right fit. I treated it like an obstacle I had been born trapped inside. I starved it, punished it, hid it under clothes that promised invisibility. I carried my brilliance in my mind and my shame in my skin. Or at least that's what I believed. But standing in my apartment that night after the meeting where the man who once dismissed me could not recognize the woman who now outranked him, I touched my arm and felt something unfamiliar. Not resentment, not apology, gratitude. My body had carried me here, not despite its size, but with it. Through every interview where they judged me before hearing me, through every night I stayed up studying because I couldn't afford to be anything less than extraordinary. Through grief, through humiliation, through years of bending without breaking. My body had been the witness to everything I survived and the vessel of everything I built. And for the first time, I looked at it not as a flaw, but as proof. Proof that endurance sometimes looks like softness. Proof that strength does not always come sculpted. Proof that taking up space is not a failure, but a presence, a declaration. In the weeks after that meeting, I began to walk differently. Not with arrogance, not with defiance, with ownership. I stopped tugging at my blazer when I entered a room. I stopped folding my arms across my stomach in photos. I stopped apologizing with my posture. I didn't tell anyone I was changing. I simply did. One morning, while preparing for a global conference, I caught my reflection in the elevator mirror. The same mirror I once whispered to after losing that interview. Back then, my eyes had been tired, pleading, desperate to belong. Now they were steady, clear, certain. I did not look smaller, I looked present, visible, alive. I whispered again, softly, "You kept your promise." My reflection smiled back. The conference was held in a ballroom with crystal chandeliers and long velvet curtains. Hundreds of people filled the room, executives, analysts, journalists. Before stepping onto the stage, I stood behind the curtain, listening to the murmur of the crowd. A familiar tightness gripped my chest, the same one that used to accompany my self-doubt. But then I placed a hand on my hip and felt my own warmth beneath my fingers. My body grounded me, anchored me, saved me. When they called my name, I walked out with a presence that filled the room. Not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because I had finally stopped trying to disappear. I spoke about leadership, about cultural shifts, about the necessity of valuing minds instead of silhouettes. I did not mention my personal story. I didn't need to. My existence on that stage was story enough. When the applause rose, I didn't shrink. I didn't bow my head. I stood in the light and let myself be seen. After the conference, a young woman approached me. She was trembling slightly, holding her notebook against her chest. "I've never seen someone like me up there," she said. "I didn't think it was possible." Something inside me cracked open gently, like a door unlocking. I placed a hand on her shoulder and said, "It is. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Her eyes filled with tears. Mine almost did too, not out of sadness, out of recognition. Because she was me, and I was her. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I made dinner slowly, deliberately. I poured a glass of wine and lit a candle. Not for romance, not for celebration, but for ritual. A quiet honoring of everything I had fought through. I sat at the table and let the flickering light bathe my hands. I ate slowly, without shame, without critique, without hurry. Each bite felt like a thank you, to myself, to my body, to the woman I had become. After dinner, I stood before the window. The city light shimmered below, reflected faintly in the glass. I placed a hand over my heart and breathed deeply. My body responded with a steady, unwavering rhythm. For years, I had begged the world to see me. Now, I finally saw myself. I wrote one final sentence in my notebook before going to bed. My body didn't fail me. It carried me to the life I deserved. I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and let the darkness settle around me like a soft blanket. For once, the darkness wasn't heavy. It was peaceful, honest, mine. If someone had told me years ago that I would end this story not with revenge, but with gratitude, I wouldn't have believed them. But here I am, not smaller, not transformed into a different woman, but fully, unapologetically myself. And maybe that's the greatest victory of all. Learning that the body I was taught to hate was the very thing that saved me. Write in the comments where you're watching from, and subscribe for more stories like this. You're not alone.